The next three are a kind of a three-faceted look on love. The first one is gray sonnet. You say that you are gray, but do you know how shades of gray are complementary to russet, red, maroon, or crimson's flow, and other hues of blood that bleed from me? You admix, so you say, of black and white, but did you notice how the dawn of gray will burst with yellow purples, pinks, and light when face to face confronted with the day? Then you are every color and are none, for black absorbs and white reflects, yet free in alchemy the rigid comes undone, and then my spectrum you more clearly see. For gray to dwell alone is gray indeed, when colors yearn to contrast, blend, and bleed. Thank you. The next is annelid sonnet. The annelid is a blood-sucking creature like a leech. I thought I had forgotten you by now, but I have not. Must I go again into this place of torment? Tell me how to get rid of this leech that suckles when I try to free it. How can I walk on when I am chained? I bury you, inside, outside, within, withal, whereon, be gone, be dead. But in the casket you abide, alive but molded, withered, rotten worm that will not die, though I had thought you dead. I lunge forth and away, but you hold firm, with prongs embedded in my bones and head. Oh, you have held a place within too long, too undeserved, too late to right the wrong. Thank you. The last of this set is called Inside the Hollow Square. It is a moment or a spot in time when time is quieted and put away, a simple thing becoming the sublime, suspended and eternal in a day. And all around me just dissolves to naught. I feel my world around me disappears. It is just me before you. I am caught between my happiness and many fears. You look at me as if you've known before all that I am in heart and soul and mind, or wish to know them here and now and more. These gazes that reveal and seek entwined. For then I look up and I realize I get lost when I look into your eyes. Thank you. This next poem is a formal poem. It's a kind of what I would say a poem of gratitude. It's called Shaman of the Waves. I am the raging tempest tossed upon the fretful sea. You are the calm and quiet gale that steadies me. And yet I am the raging sea as well as all its roar. And you are even, still, the shore that calms the shore. And I am blackened night as when the ship has sunk away. And then I see your light which shines as if a day. And in the dark and cold alone, I cry for one to hear. And then you come. You are the lifeboat drawing near. This vessel that you are is strong to bear all my within. For you receive the charge with grace, and take me in. You tilt against the whirling swirl and navigate the course so far from tumult, where I dwell with ever force. Your shoulders against the gale, and me against your chest, and we against the hollow gray, I come to rest. I find mercurial repose upon a curious shore. Because you gently landed me, I ask no more. And so we are of polar force that meets in synergy. You are the shaman of the waves. I am the sea. Thank you. This next set is a set of 3 sonnets. They are all Petrarchan in form on the aging process. And those of us that are aging can relate to this. Some of the young folks might not be able to get there yet, but here we go. The first one is called The Rise of Fall. There were such pretty flowers in the spring, the fragrant colors of a verdant time, such fresh potentiality, sublime in all the loveliness that they did bring. Then summer issued forth a deep wellspring, maturely ripening, where vines would climb and trees begin to bulge. This is the prime of life, when growth will dance and sway and sing. But autumn is the time of now. I stand amid the harvests and the fruit. The change between the then and now, it leaves me jaded. I barely have the bearings to withstand this person of today. Indeed, how strange, how much the beauty of the past has faded. Thank you. The next one is What Once Was is No More. What once was is no more. I say goodbye to youth and to the struggles of the past, and sometimes shed a tear. I stand steadfast and look ahead, and then I heave and sigh and mourn the loss of what has come to die. The unavoidable will thus contrast with sprightly, lively living that has passed. This new, old entity can mystify. I now accept the change that comes with age, the graying and the fading energies that cause me to look inward as a sage would, finding meaningful philosophies. And still I put my thoughts and hearts to page in hopes that I retain my faculties. Thank you. The last of this set is I once was sharp as blades. I once was sharp as blades, as honed as steel, and I could slice raw words within my mind and put them to paper, thus consigned to publish all I think, believe, and feel. I was as bright as day, and it was as real as sunlight, which can make the viewer blind. So sharp and light did become intertwined, and beauties from within to all reveal. But now I am as dull as rotten wool. My thoughts are nothing if not addlepated. My acumen seems gone into a pile of sweet, soft nothing. Once so strong and full of clarity, but now deteriorated. I wonder how my efforts are worthwhile. Thank you. How are we doing with the time, LaRue?
These are wonderful. I'd say maybe 2, 3 more, something like that.
Okay, that's just what I've got.
Great.
This is an ode form that I wrote for Quasimodo, and I kind of wrote it because of the fire in Notre Dame back in the spring, and it inspired me to reread The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and as a result, I always had kind of a admiration for Quasimodo, and I wrote this to honor him. Look not on the face, young girl, look at the heart. Quasimodo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. A vile, lumbering mass, so hideous, rejected and despised by every eye that fears and is repulsed by odious perversions of our kind. You horrify and shock the average sensibility for which all imperfection is rejected and avoided. You are ugliness, a limping lump of flesh. How you are affected by the body of your wretchedness. But souls, come look beyond the skin and see a difference from within the heart. Quasimodo, you are kind within your stricken, broken body. Counterpart to your condition is this rarity of spirit and mind, embodiment of good, self-sacrifice, compassion, for the love that gives all from a place of charity in spite of every pain is understood to form within as well as from above. It only took a single cooling cup of water, but you drank with thankfulness. As La Esmeralda lifted up your sorry head, you looked with gratefulness to one who chose a good deed on the day. Oh, how this changed your lonely, saddened state to gratitude and love from emptiness. For now you loved her, banished and away all forms of mockery, a better fate because your form was touched by loveliness. And then what? In her time of utmost need, you aided her, you rescued her, you saved her, sheltered her, protected her. Indeed, you gave back hundredfold for what she braved in giving you that drink. But all in vain. The gallows waited for her neck. You tried to keep her from her date with hungry death, but all for naught. For you could not obtain her liberty. You watched her as she died and let a howl out with woeful breath. You cried, and no one heard your bitter groans, but round your love were found your noble bones. Do we have time for one more? Would that be about right? Okay.
Yes, indeed. That would be fine.
Okay. The last one I wanted to share is for Carla Christopher, those of you who know her. And for those of you who don't know her, she is a poet, a community leader, an amazing person, a general amazing person. And I wrote this.
I believe she was a poet laureate of York.
Yes, of York.
Yeah.
Yes, York County. Yes, indeed. And she's someone that I wanted to honor with this poem, which I entitle "The Wise Woman" to Carla Christopher. Priestess, warrior of words, and guardian of the souls who write, you reach a mother's arm around to take the poet in. And there, inside that shelter place, is surety of insight, which aids each to discover and express her words within. Because you open doors that for too many shut away, I come to see what I am and also what I am not, and am thus less reluctant or afraid to stand and say what I must say the way I say it, and thus when I cannot. The priestess is also a warrior, for she fights for fights of rights of voiceless, meek, shy souls, afraid to take a word to page, or ones unsure of who they even are. Your haven lights a way of safety, which leads them to their pages, and then the stage. In strength you are, wise warrior, wise woman, wise to face, and are the poet mother, whereby the artist finds her place.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Has Carla heard that piece before?
Oh, yes, yes. She has it on her wall, she said. I made a copy and framed it for her.
Well, I'm sure she is grinning. Those of you who have had the pleasure of meeting, hearing, and knowing Carla can definitely tune in to that wonderful final piece by Theresa. Those of you who have not met Carla, you're in for a treat whenever you do have a chance to meet her. She is, as Theresa mentions, the poet warrior, and just wonderful poetic spirit from the York, Pennsylvania area. So this has been terrific, Theresa. If everyone who wants to could unmute at this point. As I mentioned early on, we're now kind of in the mode of being able to visit directly with Theresa. Any kind of questions, thoughts, comments? Theresa, you've gotten a lot of wonderful comments displayed in the chat room. So when you have a chance, you may want to take a gander there.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah. And I've also posted a lot of information about your books and about Berks Bards as well. So if there's any correction to any of that information that anyone wants to make, Marilyn or Theresa or Liz, please feel free to do so. I thought maybe I would prime the pump in terms of questions to you, Theresa, and then hopefully others will be able and willing to chime in.
That would be great.
I can't help but be captured, really captured by your work and by your lines towards your interest in the classical forms. The fact that you're a member, a very active member, it sounds like, of the Society of Classical Poets indicates you have a strong interest there. Can you say just a little bit more about the power of the classical forms for you and why you find it so nourishing to, you obviously write broadly in a variety of forms, but it sounds like your heart, soul, and line write is primarily focused on the classical forms. Can you say just a little bit more about that?
I think part of it is because of the music in it. And in the rhyming and in the rhythm, there's music. And I am a musician, or at least a retired one. And I was a singer for many years and a voice teacher in my other life. And I like that. I like to be able to tap into that, the sounds and the regularity of it, and yet finding my way of breaking the regularity, maybe with enjambments or something like that, that cause it to not be da 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 da. You know, I don't ever want it to sound that way. I like it to be within the skeleton or the framework, but yet produce something that is alive and musical, but not sounding restricted.
You have a very strong, you have a very powerful, strong presence when you perform your pieces. And my sense is that the rhythm and rhyme kind of helps create waves of meaning and sound that carry the piece forward. So I think you're right. For your work, it really does help convey the messages that you're trying to convey, you're wanting to convey, and you are conveying in your work. So
there's another thing that I like is really because it's fun. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but it's a challenge intellectually, and I like to be able to have a construct put out for me. If I get the feeling that I'm going to write in a certain form, let's say a sonnet, I'll write it out beforehand, and then I have to give myself something to do. I have to fit the poem into these these constrictions that I put on myself, you know, and I like that.
Yep.
I like that.
It also allows you to tap into all that vocabulary of yore, and that's fun too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's open it up. I
Alrighty.
see some people unmuted. Do any of you all have questions for Theresa?
Theresa, that's Marilyn Klumshow.
Hi.
Yeah, I get a strong sense of the theater in your poetry too.
Yes.
Maybe it's just the performance, but yeah, there's a strong sense of theater. Have you spent time in the theater?
Well, I was a professional singer for many years. So I had to be on stage doing different things. So I guess it comes out of that, I would think.
Oh, and just one quick correction to some of the announcements in the beginning. I just want to make a note that Berks Bards isn't the originator of the Berks County Poet Laureate. That's something that's sponsored by the Reading Area Community College. They're the ones who actually do this. We just make our membership aware of it.
Great. Thank you, Marilyn, for that
You're
correction.
welcome.
It's a powerful program run there in Berks County, and so people who live in the county should definitely tune in and apply for it. Other questions or comments? Yeah, Gabriella, excuse me. Yeah.
Hey, I'm wondering when you first started with poetry, and at that time, like, how have you seen your poetry transition over the years of writing?
I was 10 years old and I remember writing something. I was at summer camp and I wrote something about the water, lapping against the waves like a mother's gentle kiss to her babe. I was 10 years old and I wrote that. And then somehow in high school, it must have been in high school, because I thinking about it. When did I ever learn how to write a sonnet? Like, I don't remember ever sitting down and learning that, but somehow I must have along the way done it. And then as far as the forms, that was more of an interest of mine. And then I kind of took that on as the years went on. But I think I wrote a lot more free verse when I was younger. And as I'm older now, it's more formal poetry. But that's not, I don't want to put a box on that, because I have written some free verse lately too. So it's been a progression more towards formal poetry in general, I suppose.
A follow-up to that then, as a musician and someone who's written songs before, how do you find the distinction between songwriting lyrically and poems that you write?
The songs that I have written are lyrical, and I like them to be poetry in and of themselves. I like them to be nice poetry in and of themselves. In Jesus and Eros, which is a separate book from this one, this is just sonnets, only sonnets. Jesus, I don't have a copy of Jesus and Eros with me, but that's sonnets, poems, and songs. There's a few, a section of sonnets, a section of poems that are not sonnets, and then a section of songs that I wrote, which are the song lyrics. So I approach it, I have to say, I approach it very similarly in my mind. I want them to be poems as well as, as beautiful as any non-song poem that I've written.
Diane Wilbon Parks, who is a wonderful poet in Bowie, Maryland, and also a visual artist of note, has noted in the chat room, Theresa's given character and rhythm to her poems, memorable. I would also suggest that there's a lot of color in your work, Theresa, both in terms of tone, but also just mention of all the palettes and colors. How important is that to you? And Diane might even want to comment a little bit on your use of color, because I know Diane is an active use of, takes an active use of color in her work as well.
Well, isn't it nice to be able to take the senses and put them into poetry so that you can recreate it in your mind?
Absolutely.
That is a lovely thing.
Theresa, your voice and your inflection and your description and imagery, I have all enjoyed this evening.
Thank you.
I love the way that you read, because you really give your work dance and song, even though they're poems. The way that you read it gives each poem their own personality, its own character.
That's wonderful.
And I
you.
truly enjoyed your reading this evening, and it
Oh,
does
thank you
have
so much.
lots of color. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. I appreciate that very, very much.
Yes, thank you, Diane. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I'm going to put Ed, my cue from San Francisco, or Gloria, if you have any questions or thoughts, please chime in.
Yeah, I would just second what Diane said. The poem about the rise of fall is not something that necessarily me or any of the other younger people can relate to, but because you use something that we've all experienced, which is spring and fall, we can relate to it. So good job, Mom.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm happy to hear that.
Ed?
I wonder, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah. What other forms are you using regularly, like maybe a pen tune or?
I've written several odes, which is I don't have, I have to go back and remember exactly what it is, but it's it's a longer, the stanzas are longer, and then you can repeat that. I've done some terza rima. I've done villanelle, rondo. I'm trying to think of triolets. But I have to say my heart lies with the sonnet. I don't know why. It worked out that way in my life. I think the reason why I like them so much is because there's one of the sonnets that I wrote about sonnets, which is actually going to be published in Society of Classical Poets on Monday, it should be. It's called Sonnet, Sonnet. And in it, I write about distilled and condensed thought, having its say. And I think that's what I like about it, is that you can condense down a great amount of concept into a very small framework, which I really, really like. And then it's sort of like, well, distillation, you know, condensed and distillation. I really, really like that. I like being able to do that. I hope that I continue to do it. But I'm very, very thrilled with being able to put all the 65 sonnets that I've written so far are in here. So I'm very, very pleased and that I was able to get that together this year. It was wonderful.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled.
Yes.
Cool.
Was there anything that prompted you, that you could think of or your friends might notice in your life that really got you going in formal poetry more than anything else? And at what age?
Probably because I was a classical singer, and you have to sing formal poetry when you're singing, and you know there's a lot of rhythm and rhyme in it, and it resonated with me, and I think it was natural for me because of that.
Having 6 children, did you have time in the early years of your family?
I'm sorry, say it again.
You had 6 children.
Yeah.
And you have 6 grandchildren.
Right.
When you were younger and you had the children,
I wasn't writing a whole. I must say I wasn't really writing then. It's been wonderful now that I'm older and the kids are grown that I have the time. It's like wine, you know, it's coming into its own now.
But what kind of poetry did you write when you had the children?
I don't know if I honestly don't know if I wrote any.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think I wrote a whole lot when they were young. When they were very young, I definitely didn't. I didn't have time.
You were probably storing things up for use later.
I think so. I think
Yeah,
so.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I wish that I had time. I was doing other things at that point, but it's very nice to. I'm very thankful for this stage of life right now.
I have a younger friend about your age, who, when she was, let's see, her husband 30 years ago had a stroke, and then later she was writing everything, and then later she herself had trouble with breast cancer and a number of other kinds of things, and around that time she began to move strongly into formal poetry. And I was wondering, that's the reason I asked the question, did something happen in your life that caused you to move in one direction rather than another?
I didn't have the easiest life. It's hard to explain it, and I don't have time to get into it, but things have been, I had some hard things happen. Maybe there's something in the formalness of things that creates a security or a structure of dependability or something like that. That's possible.
Interesting. I believe I saw Ms. iPad.
Ms. iPad. This is
yes, Ms.
yes.
Question.
AKA Jane Brown.
Jane Brown.
Hi, Jane.
Hi. You've already mentioned in Jamit and a couple of things that are ways that you rhythmically or otherwise fight against the form to create a contemporary or natural voice. I was just, and I wanted to say that addlepated and dilapidated is one of my favorite rhymes ever. So that was awesome.
Oh, that's great.
And so just, some of the ways that you give a sonnet a contemporary voice or, so people can connect to it.
I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
I hope so. That's, I like it to almost not sound like a sonnet, like, and then you go back to it and you go, oh yeah, that did rhyme.
Right.
Oh, that was ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE, or whatever I did,
Right.
Theresa.
But it's like an extra surprise or something.
Yeah.
That's nice. Good. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think Marilyn had something.
Oh yeah, Marilyn. Sure.
Theresa, I'm not terribly familiar with a lot of modern day formal poets. Have you read any of them? People who are of this time and place.
There's one guy on he writes. He's a very religious man, so you'd have to accept that in context of what he writes. Very religious Catholic guy, and his name is Joseph Charles Mackenzie, and he has a book of sonnets called Sonnets for Christ the King, or Sonnets of Christ the King. And it's out there. I think you can get it on Amazon or whatever, but I did download it onto my Kindle and read it. He's a very good sonneteer.
And what was the last name again?
Mackenzie, M-A-C capital K-E-N-Z-I-E. I've somehow found the Society of Classical Poets about maybe 7 years ago, 7 years ago. And I started being published with them back then. And then I've gotten into the habit in the last year and a half of reading every day what the new poets that are on there, including myself, of course. But there's really, really good poetry, modern poetry of formal nature out there. It's I've been very, very pleased. So that's been, I consider myself in good company.
Yeah, I wanted to mention Kim Adonisio. She writes wonderful, sexy, raunchy, very contemporary, and technically awesome sonnets.
Oh yes, there's also Joseph Salemi, Salemi. He writes a lot of satirical things. He's very, but he's well regarded in the formal poetry circles.
Can you read that poet again? I think your name is Jane.
Oh yes, it's Kim Adonisio. It's ADD. If I knew how to use chat, I would write it down. ADDONIZIO.
That's correct.
Adonisio.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you.
Well, listen, as we come into the home stretch, I want to give anyone especially anyone who has not yet had a chance to speak up, to do so. But in the meantime, I want to begin to thank Theresa before she reads her final poem for bringing the richness of form and structure and classical power to the circle tonight. It's just been wonderful. Really appreciate that very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Let me just tease you with
Yes.
what's coming. November 5, the next first Thursday, will feature 2 past Berks County Poet Laureates and the current one. And those are Heather Thomas and Sandra Fees, wonderful poets both, and Jane Relaford Brown. And of course, there will be mention at that point, big time, about applying for the Berks County Poet Laureateship. So November 5, note that on your calendar, same time, same station, so to speak. And then December 3rd, one of my favorite poets from the area that I live in, Sylvia Lady Di Beverly, will be featured. And if you've not heard Lady Di read, you're in for a real treat. Hopefully, she'll wear one of her signature hats when she comes into that reading. So we'll see. But that's on December 3rd. So is there any final question or comment for Theresa before we ask her to sign off this evening with another final wonderful poem by her?
I'd like to just say thank you for so much. It's been such a pleasant evening doing this, and I enjoyed the feedback from everybody and the comments and the questions. It's been wonderful. I appreciate it so much.
I like the format of the Berks Bards readings, where there's, of course, a lot of attention given to showcasing the poet of note, but then there's also a chance to interact. So many readings I go to, you just listen and maybe have a chance to read in an open mic, but then everyone leaves. And so this is kind of nice to be able to actually interact with people like Theresa and learn from them. So that's really cool. Well, Theresa, if you wouldn't mind, if you could close us out for the evening, the enchanted evening, with a final poem.
This is I honestly think this was the first poem that I got published with the Society of Classical Poets. It's not a sonnet because it's missing a quatrain. So it's got 10 lines instead of 14. It's called The Fallen Vestige. The fallen vestige of her foliate time, browned leaves beneath, coarse needles of old pine once green and pungent, when her nests in spring with peeping chicks and swaying boughs would sing. So splendors fade, as does the daily light of seed and growth and birth and bloom and height. Such pastels surely rise to later blend into the morose darks of autumn end. But when to earth her fullness drops like tears, it thus becomes the soil of future years.
Good.
Thank you. I truly appreciate
Very, very nice. Thank you, Theresa, and thanks for everyone who showed up.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it so much.
With your wonderful ears, from the West Coast to Mid-Atlantic to Pennsylvania, of course. So really appreciate everyone zooming in, and a special thanks to Theresa Rodriguez and to the folks at Berks Bards.
Absolutely.
Liz
Thank you so much, Berks
Marilyn
Bards.
Clemcho, for making it all possible. So join us next month on the first Thursday when the Poet Laureates, present and the last couple of Poet Laureates, present their work. We'll see everyone then. Take care.
Thank you.
That was
Bye-bye.
amazing.
Good night.
Good night.